Hey, Restorer, this is Pastor Ryan. We're so thankful that you're with us this week. We are in our fourth week of our series, 7-Day March. And we've been kind of looking at this idea of believing the promise before the walls fall down. And we're looking at Joshua and the first 6 books of the book of Joshua, just watching just their how Joshua took the reins, right, from Moses. And so I want you to kind of follow along with us. Just as a note, at the end of our service, we're going to take communion. And so even though you're not with us in person, I want you to be able to take communion. So you can use the first few moments here as a message gets started. You can pause for a moment and get up and get maybe a cracker or juice, bread, whatever it is that you have handy. It doesn't need to be all this, specific stuff. Just grab a cracker, bread, and a little bit of juice, or even your coffee, whatever you're drinking this morning, and that can be your communion. And we'll be doing that at the end of the message today. So we're looking at chapter 4 of Joshua, and this idea of building memorials in our life. And why does this even matter? What does it look like for each one of us? In August of 1995, a young boy by the name of Emmett Till was visiting his family in Money, Mississippi. And Emmett was just 14 years old. He wasn't from Mississippi. He actually was living in Chicago at the time with his mother. And his father had served in the military and was no longer living. So here you have a young mother and 14-year-old Emmett Till living in Chicago. And one summer, his uncle was visiting Chicago and getting ready to go back to Money, Mississippi. And he begged his mom, please, please, please let me go back with my uncle to Mississippi to see my cousins and spend some time down there. And then I'll go back home, come back to Chicago. And so Emmett does this. His mom says, all right, go ahead. And he ends up leaving and spending some time down in Money, Mississippi. And one day, I believe it was around August 24th, Emmett and his cousins had been working in the cotton field. And they finished for the day, and they decided to go into town to Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market. And as they go there, Emmett went in and bought a pack of gum. And the exact nature of what happened in the store may never fully be known. The details of what the lady working in the store said and what Emmett and his friends said happened is really never fully going to be known. 4 days after Emmett went into this grocery store, 3 men, including the husband of the lady who was working at the store, kidnapped Emmett from his uncle's house. These 3 men kidnapped him, beat him, brutally dragged him down to the river, tied him up with wire, tied him to a fan, and dropped him into the river, killing Emmett Till. After Emmett's body was found, Emmett was sent back home to be laid to rest back in Chicago. And back in Chicago, his mother opted to have an open casket funeral with his body to be on display for 5 days at Robert's Temple Church of God. So she said that people could see the evidence of this brutal hate crime. When asked exactly why, his mother, Mamie, shared this: "Let the world see what has happened because there's no way I could describe this. And I needed somebody to help me tell what it was like. See, what she is saying here is, I need you to see what these men have done to Emmett. See, I need them to see, because if I share with you, you won't believe me. If I share it with my words, they won't do the justice that needs to be done to this moment. She was wanting people to see. She shared people needed to remember what had happened. Remembering through the pictures and the moments with the open casket of young Emmett Till. See, today we're going to look at this passage in Joshua, and God is imploring the people. He's imploring Joshua to do something to help the people remember. See, he knows, God knows, that humans have a tendency to forget or remember wrong what actually happened and who is responsible. See, for Mamie Till, she knew that no amount of her telling her sorrow could help people to understand what happened that day in Money, Mississippi in August of 1955. But she knew that Emmett's picture would be a lasting memorial. Let's read Joshua 4. We're not going to read the entire chapter, but we're going to kind of read the beginning section and then at the end. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Now choose 12 men, one from each tribe, telling them, 'Take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight.'" Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel, and he had told them, "Go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each one must pick up one stone and carry it on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' Then you can tell them, 'They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's covenant went across.' These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever." So the men did as Joshua had commanded. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, one for each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to a place where they camped for the night and constructed the memorial there. End of the chapter, starting in verse 21. Then Joshua said to the Israelites, "In the future your children will ask, 'What do these stones mean?' Then you will tell them, 'This is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before our eyes, and he kept it dry until you were all across, just as he did to the Red Sea when he dried it up until we had all crossed over. He did this so all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, so you might fear the Lord your God forever." The importance of memorializing the work of God. See, I believe that part of the reason that God knew that this was important for the people of Israel and for Joshua is because people have really short memories, right? And it's odd. The things we will always remember and never forget, and the things that we just, that happened like that, right? And I think that God was doing this for the people of Israel because he knew that there have been times in their past, right? That there have been times in their not too distant past that they forgot about things. See, the people Joshua is leading have had to go through a lot in their life. At times in their journey, they would quickly forget what had happened and who was responsible for those moments. You see, they were on their way out of Egypt, and soon after they left their slavery, they said, you know what, it would actually be better for us to go back to Egypt and be slaves again. Because they were uncomfortable, because it wasn't going their way, because they just forgot, right? They have this memory that doesn't keep up with what's going on. And so we have this moment that God is trying to solve this problem that's going on. The problem that God is trying to help fix is how do I get you to remember, right? He says, I want to do this. I need you to do this so you remember this moment. And see, over time, the memories of who was responsible for the moment can be lost, right? Sometimes they would forget of who was really the one that took care of us right there. But see, the stones tell the story. But see, the stones won't lie. What is your story? When we were kids, my parents, my dad and my uncle and my grandpa, they had been renting different parts of land to farm around us. And they did this because it just gave them extra crops, to make it through the year or to sell. And there was one piece of land that was a little bit further away from the farm than the rest of our land. And it wasn't that great of land because it grew rocks really well, right? And so every year, usually in the spring, I'm remembering, right? Before planting, we would go out and we would pick rock. And I always thought to myself as a kid, I don't know who's coming in here in the middle of the night and planting rocks, but it needs to stop, right? And so they would have this tractor driven by my grandfather, usually. It was a hydraulic trailer pulled behind it. And we as kids would have to walk the field behind the tractor, and we would pick up rocks. And the idea was to pick up any rocks that could get stuck or damage the planter or the disc. And so we would walk the fields, and any rocks we pick up and put down on the trailer. Pick up and put down. And sometimes we had to take 2 of us, 3 of us to put these big rocks up on to the trailer. And we would walk the fields this way, and then we'd come back the other way. And we at the end of the field, there was a line of trees. And my grandfather would then back it up and dump the rocks into the woods. And then we would start over. We'd walk the fields one way, the other, and one way and the other. We'd dump the rocks at the end of the fields. We'd walk back and forth, and the goal was to leave the field at the end of the day with it clear of rocks so we could plant. There was also the goal to leave with all of our 10 fingers intact and attached as much as we could. And we did this for as long as I can remember growing up. It was just part of our spring, part of just a Saturday, usually, maybe sometimes 2. We would go out and we would do this. And we would finish the year collecting these rocks, and I don't think I understood the story of this See, I don't know if I ever really knew what this meant until later. See, years later, I would be driving by the field, and I remember as we would get close, I'd look, oh man, is this the field? And I would tell my family, this is the field we used to have to go pick rock in, and I'd slow down as we passed the fields that I thought were potential yet, and looking off into the distance towards the back of the fields to see, and I would look, slow down and see, and could see sometimes in the trees and the tree line piles of rock back there. I was looking for something that I hoped was still there, right? Those piles of rocks that were there. Remembering those Saturdays of hard work, and I remember the tins of cookies and sandwiches and the gallons of water and tea my grandma prepared for us before we would go out into the fields. The moments of lifting rocks as big as my head onto the trailer and walking down further to the next one. Remembering my fingers getting smashed at times by flying rocks from my cousins and my brother as they would toss rocks onto the trailer from where they were at. See, I don't think it was the plan of my father to build those rock piles as a reminder. They just dumped them there. But that's what happened. See, the problem that we struggle with in our humanity is that when time moves on, we can forget and not remember correctly who God is and what actually happened. And so the question I asked for myself, and I wonder if the Israelites were asked this at times, is where have you come from? Right? Like, where have you come from? Because that's, I think, is a miraculously important question to ask ourselves as we go through life, as we go through these different moments each day. And as I ask myself that, as they ask themselves that, and with Joshua leading the helm, right, is can the bad moments in our life, can these bad moments be a time worth memorializing, right? That when we go through a bad space in our lives, when we go through a tragic moment, are they worth building a memorial to? See, I believe that it took a lot of courage for them to walk across the Jordan River onto dry ground. See, I think it took a lot of courage for those priests to be carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And if you read in chapter 3, as Dave shares last week, that they carried the Ark of the Covenant up on their shoulders. As they carried it, he says, I want you to step into the river, right? See, God didn't stop the river and then they went in. God had the people carrying the Ark of the Covenant go into the water, and the courage that took to do that. But see, it's not their courage, it's the courage given to them by God. See, the courage to take that first step, to trust that God is going to part the waters like he said he was going to. Deuteronomy 6:12 says this, be careful not to forget the Lord who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. See, this idea of be careful can also be said to take care, right? I need you to take care, God says. God says, I need you to take a moment and be careful, be wary of how you process who actually came through for you. You see, God says that I need you to remember who rescued you. You didn't rescue yourself. If you could have rescued yourself from Egypt, from slavery, you would have done it a long time ago, but you couldn't do it on your own. And so I sent somebody See, I was the one. But I need you to take care. I need you to be careful. Remembering. See, God knew that they needed this help because, see, they were His. The Israelites were His people, and He created them and He put them together. And see, He knew that at times they would forget, that they wouldn't remember, and He knew that these memories were fading. And so He shares in Deuteronomy, and then He shares again here in Joshua. He says, I need you to build this memorial. See, I need you to build this memorial because you may not always have it at the front of your mind, but when you walk by with your family, your kids, and your grandkids, when you walk by in this moment, they're going to ask what that is, and you get a chance to share the parting of the Jordan, the parting of the Red Sea. See, God knew they needed something to remember, to tell the story of what happened and who provided the way. So we were out of our house for 9 months as we worked back from the derecho and kind of worked through insurance and all that fun stuff. And as we were kind of working through all that, I remember we were living in our first apartment, and I remember one day as we were dealing with insurance and the stress of the contractors and all the stuff that we were waiting on, I remember getting a phone call one day, and it was just horrible news about the insurance didn't want to cover something. And it just was this rush of just grief and sadness. And I remember sitting in my office at work just weeping as I pounded my office desk saying, "Are you kidding me, God?" And I remember going home that day. And I remember as I drove back to the apartment, God kind of speaking to my heart and my mind and saying, "Give grace." That this moment is frustrating, this moment is terrible. Give grace. And so I walked in, and Sarah said, "What do you want to do for dinner?" And I said, "You know what? I need to have a shame meal. We're getting Taco Bell. Plus I have a coupon for a free one of those boxes with the taco and all the good stuff in it." And I was like, a chalupa box, right? And so I said, "We are getting this. I'm going to eat it. I have had a horrible day." And I had filled her in on what was going on. And she was like, "All right, let's go." And so she didn't want to go with us. And so I put the boys in the van, and we hopped in and we started to drive towards the Taco Bell here in town. We get up there and we're in line, right, to go through. And the boys were like, "Why are we eating Taco Bell tonight, Dad?" And I just kind of shared with them. I said, "You know, I've had a really bad day." And I said, I just wanted to do something just different, right, for dinner. And as we kind of get up there, again, God kind of just pressed on me, "Give grace, give grace." And I looked at the mirror and I saw my boys back there. And I said, "Guys, you know what? This has been a horrible day. But you want to know what? We're going to give grace today. So we are going to buy the person behind us, we're going to buy their meal." And I looked at my wallet and I only had cash. I didn't have my cards on me. And I had enough for our meal, and I think I had about like a little over $20 left. But I figured for to pay for the vehicle behind me, and I thought we're at Taco Bell. I mean, you can buy basically the entire store for like $18, right? And so I thought, that's gonna be plenty of money for us. And so we get up to the to order, and the boys place their order, and I placed mine, and Sarah Sarah was at home, but I placed her order for her. And then we get up to the window, and I said, "Here's my money for my order." And she gave me, I said, "You know what? I have had a horrendous day." And she just kind of looked at me like, "I'm sorry, I said, "But I'm going to give grace today, and I want to pay for the car behind us. Can you tell me their total?" And I pulled out the 20 whatever I had in cash, and Zeke says, "Dad, I want to give some money to this meal. Can I give I have $1 with me." And he had $1 in his pocket or something. So this is what I have. And so he gave me the $1, and so I put our 21 something or whatever we had exactly there, and she goes, "Okay." I said, "So if you just give me the total, I'd like to pay for that person's order." She's like, "That's awesome. That's so kind of you." And she looks back and grabs the total and says, the total for their order was $48 and whatever cents. And I was like, $48? I said, "How much Taco Bell did they get?" And then I realized that the Taco Bell here in town is a Taco Bell / KFC. And so I just was stunned. I didn't have $48. And I said, "Well, I don't have $48, but I have $21 and whatever change to put towards their order." And I gave them that, and I gave them the money. I said, "Just let them know that somebody, the car ahead of them, just loves and cares about them." And so my boys were laughing behind me, and I grabbed our food and we left. And I just remembered that I just couldn't believe, one, that somebody would order that much Taco Bell, and then it turned into a family feast at KFC, right? But I will never forget that moment. See, in a moment of deep sadness and sorrow and frustration, see, God provided a memorial. See, even in the bad moment of my day, God provided a memorial, because he wanted me to remember, give grace. Give grace. Ryan, today is not good. Give grace. And so that's been this altar in my mind, in my heart, as I remember Taco Bell. And so now Taco Bell will kind of always be my memorial. Whenever when I think of that moment, and I remember how good God is and how he provides. See, there have been times as a parent that I've had to try to get my son's attention, right? And they've got something going on. They've got a song on. They're kind of in their own zone, right? I'm like, "Hey, guys," nothing. Zeke and Titus, nothing. Zeke and Titus, I need your attention. Nothing. I'll clap really loud and like, "Dad, what are you doing?" Right? And they're like, why did you say something? We would have listened to you. And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me, right? Like, I've been trying to get your attention for the last few minutes, and you don't." So I'd slam my hands and yell, right, to get their attention. And of course, none of you are parents like that. All of your kids listen amazingly. You never have to yell over something or clap your hands or whatever. They just are attentive to you the moment you say, "Excuse me," right? See, I wanted their attention for a moment to tell them something that was important. I didn't want to get them the attention for myself, to attract all the attention to me, because I was just this attention monster, right? You see, at times it's reported that God that he uses us to build these altars and memorials to make it all about him, right? Some people think that, well, God only wants you to follow him or to build that memorial, that altar to him because it's all about him and he's this attention monster, right? Like the golden statue of Nebuchadnezzar, right? And it says, bow to me, look at this golden statue of me, it's all about me. And you see, look at me, and this mentality is not really God's style. So the question I've been asking myself as I've been processing this passage is, why does God want us to remember? Like, why is it so important to God that we remember? Why is it so important that we build these altars and memorials? Why was it so important for Israel to build them? Why? Why was it so important that they remember? He wanted them to remember the Red Sea was parted and the Jordan River was parted. For him, that he fed them the manna and the quail. Is it because he's this arrogant jerk who wants all the glory for himself? To strut around like a peacock and say, look at me, I'm the God? No. See, I don't believe that that's why God does it. I don't believe that he does that because that's not his style. See, he does this. He wanted them to build these memorials, these altars at these pivotal moments of the Red Sea, of the Jordan River, of all of these things, of the healing in the wilderness. He does this not because he wants the attention or demands the attention. It is because he wants to part your Jordan River again and again. See, he wants us to remember that he is the one that provided you courage when you needed to take that step and stay sober. See, he wants you to remember that he was the one that provided you the mercy when you messed up and came back to him. He wants you to remember that he ran out to you when you made your slow walk back to him. He wants you to remember that at your lowest moment, he poured grace and forgiveness into you. He wants you to remember, not because he wants to shame you. He wants you to remember so he can do it again. He wants you to remember so that the next time you have a moment of doubt and a moment of fear, he can say, look at what I've done for you. Look at what I've done through you. Deuteronomy 6:12 again says, be careful not to forget the Lord, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. So be careful not to forget the Lord who rescued you. Be careful not to forget the Lord. Be careful not to forget. Take care. See, there are going to be times when you are the one carrying the ark to part the Jordan River so others can walk on dry ground. And that's going to take courage. There are times when you are the one that's going to be walking behind others because you can't carry the ark. Maybe you know of moments in your life when you've been down and you needed others to carry the ark in front of you. What does your memorial say about what God has done for you? That God saved you? That God was faithful? That God is just? That God is a caring God? See, what do you need to remember today? See, these last 3 years have been really difficult, and some of us have come out of it with gigantic spiritual muscles, and we had no issues. But a lot of us came out of it with wounds and scars and hurts. Some of us can say, I barely made it out of those months and those moments. And we wonder if we really have a testimony to share. And for you and for me, sometimes the greatest testimony that we can give is, I'm still here. That thought that through all of it, through everything we've been through, I'm still here. Through your recovery from addiction, I'm still here. Through the loss of a family member that cut you very deep, I'm still here. From the loss of a child or a spouse, I'm still here. Through the loss of a job, through the loss of your identity and finding it again, I'm still here. See, I don't know what you need to remember, but whatever it is, I want you to put it somewhere. Maybe it's on a piece of paper on your desk at work, a piece of paper on the fridge, a piece of paper on a cabinet, on the mirror in the bathroom. Whatever it is, whatever your memorial is, I want you to write it down and put it somewhere where you walk by there, you can see that thing that says faithful, just, caring, or I'm still here. So today we're going to take communion together, and I want you to take the bread or the cracker and the drink, whatever you have, and I want you to take your communion, and you're going to take it now at this time. And at the Last Supper, the final supper, Jesus took the bread and he broke it, and he said, this is my body broken for you. And when you do this, will you remember me? Every time you do it, every time you break the bread, remember my sacrifice. And then he took the cup of the new covenant, and he said, this is the cup of the new covenant of my blood, shed for you. See, anytime you take of this, remember me until I return. So take the bread, the cracker, and the drink today, remembering who God is, what he's done for you, and that he wants to do it again.